Hi all, I thought for the interest of completeness we should look at the other key game between Stockfish and Leela in the TSAT Cup 2018. So Leela had previously defeated both the Fire engine and the Ethereal chess engine, so had done very well to reach this semi-final of 2018. But Stockfish is a remarkable engine, a great product of the open source community movement, and leads the official computer engine rating lists, most of them by a long margin, by a big margin. So anyway, Stockfish playing white, d4, the opening book, g6 is given, c4, bishop g7. So this is the opening book. We have e4, and now Leela plays knight f6. It looks rather provocative, hitting this pawn, encouraging e5. If we look at this position actually with e5, maybe it's not entirely great for white. After knight g8, bishop f4, d6, black. It's a provocative game, but it might actually be playable. So anyway, Stockfish declines that invitation for pushing the pawn with bishop d3, d6, knight e2. So this avoids potential pins. If the knight had gone to f3, then maybe this pin here later, and sometimes black is putting up a lot of pressure on this d4 square, sometimes playing for e5 as well later, so the pin can be important there. So knight e2 bypasses a lot of that stuff. We could also just simply transition here into, well, we are transitioning into quite a well-known position after knight c6, knight bc3, e5, d5, knight d4. This is looking like standard territory. White castles. c5 now is played. Now here it's probably unwise to take on c6. If d takes c6, b takes this position, it seems as though black should be equal. So perhaps more wisely, bishop g5, keeping this pesky knight here on d4. So we have black castling, f3, h6 from Leela. This is a target now on h6, this pawn, and white doesn't have to take on f6, of course, so drops back the bishop. a5, which seems to lock down any b4 ideas later. I'll give you an example why this might be useful. Say king h8 and white builds up. Let's give black just some token moves. If b4 is going to be effectual, it could be doing this to uproot the knight later. If this happens, then this is a small edge for white. So, but a5 has a slight downside. That b5 square is a bit more sensitive. Queen c1 hits the h6 pawn. Now that is protected by the king. Rook b1, b6, b3, and then we have knight h5. This is a bit of provocation again by Leela, because it seems as though this knight can be kicked with g4. And funny enough, I had an over the board game myself, which was very scary, and I did play this myself, and now g4, and the knight just went back. So I have actually played like this with black, and this is exactly what Stockfish does, g4. The thing is, okay, pawns don't go backwards, and it's proving if this light square pawn structure has adjacent dark square weaknesses. Sometimes if this bishop can be exchanged off, sometimes like this for this bishop when that pawn moves, then these squares will be more vulnerable, the dark squares in white's camp. We have king g2, h5, h3, king h8, bishop g5 pins that knight, unpinning with queen d7, bishop h4, we have knight h7, queen d2. Now f6 is played. If we look at f5 more energetic, I'm not sure it's justified. E takes, knight takes d4, knight b5. This position is actually very dangerous for black. White can even do a piece sack like this to crash down that center file. There are a lot of dynamic dangers to this. This is just an example continuation. But yeah, with knight f7 coming in, this is very dangerous for black. So, okay, we have the more conservative f6, so keeps things more closed. Knight b5, so with the option of knight takes d4 here, but Leela takes on b5 here. C takes. This does give white the c4 square, potentially. Queen e8, rook b e1, rook a7, bishop f2, queen d8, knight g3, and now h4 pressing down on the dark squares, but pawns don't go backwards. Is Leela overcommitting here? Now in this position, actually, f5 is played here. We have that ignored actually with bishop e3, rook a f7. On f4, this position is a little bit locked up for black, whilst white can still play for g4. So I'm not sure this is desirable. White's going to have a small edge here with pressure, and maybe even a piece sack later. So rook a f7, keeping the tension going, the pawn tension. So we have queen c2, fg, now fg here. So there's one shared f file. Bishop f6, this does look like a strategic opportunity for black now to exchange off these dark square bishops and prove the vulnerability, or try to prove the vulnerability of white on dark squares against these adjacent light square pawns. However, this plan, it's interfered with here by Stockfish. But just before we go into that, if black had played rook takes f1, it looks as though this isn't so bad for Leela. If just playing like this with the strategic exchange of bishops here being promoted, because the knight's also stopping any g5 as well technically. But say this happens, this looks as though this should be an even position. So maybe that's a little bit surprising. This could have been a guaranteed like strategic exchange that Leela could have played. So that opportunity is missed or not taken advantage of. Bishop f6 instead. But now this interruption with bishop h6, forcing the rook to go. Move. And now bishop drops back. Rook takes f7. Yeah, this is much stronger than bishop takes g7 check, because here it seems as though black's getting a small edge there actually. The strategic exchange plus pressure on the f file. Yeah, so rook takes f7. White avoids that bishop exchange, dropping the bishop out here. Queen f8. So that looks a bit scary for f2, but that's protected now with this move knight c3, protecting f2 here from the blast on the f file. But actually, fundamentally, it seems black's counterplay might be limited here, but it is very, very tempting what Leela played here. Extremely tempting to infiltrate via the f3 square. Very tactically tempting. Now, instead of that tactical temptation, again, it seems as though bishop h6, which is what a lot of King's Indian players with a blocked-in bishop was often aimed to do, get rid of this bishop, swap it off white's bishop, because there's a lot of pawns statistically on light squares, so there's dark square weaknesses around the shop here. So exchanging off here is often a very common strategy actually in the King's Indian, under the right circumstances, to try and weaken white on these squares. Now here, bishop h6, for example, this position looks fairly harmless for black. If the queen just drops back, it looks like an even position. Any knight a4, there might be queen d8 protecting b6. So, yeah, it seems as though this might have been more interesting in a way. But this looks very tactically tempting to play rook f3. But we have gone into the realm of tactical ideas and tactical variations, which Stockfish is the master of, basically. Rook f1 is played. Now, just to show the dangers clearly, if a4 rook g3 check and then bang rook takes h3 check is a big advantage for black, because there's a loose rook on e1. That's never going to be allowed though. by Stockfish. So rook f1 is played, and the rook is protected by the bishop here on the event of rook g3 check. So, but we have rook g3 check anyway, king h2, and now knight f6. So Luna seems to have caught on to something here of tactical interest. White now plays queen e2, which reinforces the g4, and note there's a pin. Now here, this is a remarkable turning point of the game, it seems. Leela commits to bishop takes g4, believe it or not. There is a much safer move. Maybe this could be kept in reserve, the tension of playing this. A much safer move, queen d8, and it's not entirely clear if this is that bad for black. So queen e8 does humbly protect the b6 pawn in advance of, say, knight a4. So say knight a4. This position would seem as though white's only got a small edge here. But yeah, possibly that's a dangerous little edge. But in this game, yeah, this is very, very committal. Bishop takes g4 was actually played here. And we have hg, and the idea is not knight takes g4 check, because then queen takes g4 is mopping black up. For example, here, queen takes h4 check, and then taking the queen. So the idea is actually queen c8. So yeah, queen c8. By the way, on rook takes g4, then rook takes f6, and that rook's hanging. White's got a big advantage there. So hg, queen c8 is played. And yeah, this is maybe all calculated by Stockfish. It seems rook takes f6 is a good move here, and that's played. An alternative here is not so good. To not offer some material back is not a good idea at all. Say rook f3, queen takes g4. This should at least be an even position for black, because there's things like knight f2 check now being threatened. So say white parries, check. There's at least a perpetual check available to black. So yeah, rook takes f6, though bishop takes. Now knight d1, and maybe this is where Leela had totally miscalculated this. It seems the rook is a total liability in this position, prone to be trapped here, this entrenched rook. So we have the move bishop d8. As an example, if queen takes g4, then taking, maybe this had been the thing that's miscalculated here. One of the things is the rook is given no peace here, because after bishop e2, sacking the e pawn, knight c3, it seems the rook's just running out of squares. Bishop e3, and now bishop c4 with a3 incoming. And for example, this is just winning for white. This is a total winning position for white. So this is very, very tricky. If we just run that through again, so say this position, on rook g3 instead, bishop d2, and again the rook is actually hounded here. a4 just takes, that's too dangerous, because a5 breaks a passed pawn there. And say bishop d6, a6, this is sufficient for white. After knight c3 takes, a7 is queening. So it's all sorts of dangers here in this position. In this variation, it just seems bishop e2 is leading white to a winning position. So anyway, bishop d8 is played, and now knight b2, queen d7, knight c4. Yeah, white seems to be improving the position. King g8, queen f1. So it looks in some ways as though g4 is scary, but you know, black is tied down here now to d6. A4 is played. As an example, let's have a look at a concrete example though. Queen takes bishop e2 first. Here, this is actually a good idea, just to harass that rook. In fact, forget about d6, even more important, just harassing that rook. So there's dangers like that. And on rook takes g4, then queen h3 is a nasty pin. So here, this is a disaster again. Bishop e2, very, very nasty stuff. So okay, so we have a4, that's taken. Queen takes now. So what difference does that a4 make, you might wonder? Bishop e2. Okay, so here actually Leela goes for rook h3 check. On queen takes e4, then knight takes d6 might be the best move here, not just try. Best move here, knight takes d6. So hitting the queen and supporting queen f7. So for example here, check, check. This, we pick up, white picks up the bishop, comes back. It's a massive advantage for white. Pretty safe. Piece is protected. So yeah, rook h3 check is played. That's taken. Queen takes, king g1. Queen takes c4. However, in this position, it's white's turn, and Stockfish plays check, and actually forcing the win of the bishop with check, because the king can't come out here because this bishop's controlling h6, so it's actually forcing the win of that bishop with check. And then the queen comes back on a dark square, protecting this bishop, as well as hitting g6. So g6 is protected at least, but now white breaks open this dangerous past b pawn. That's taken. Bishop d2, king g7. Yeah, this b pawn is pushed, and white's controlling with this bishop d2 that key square. The queen can't easily come back for it. There's check though here. Okay, the pawn is offered, but it's too dangerous to the black king. The black king will get mated if this pawn is snapped off. This means like check and then bishop h6. Yeah, it looks disastrous, that sort of thing anyway. So king f7, but now queen takes h4. We have queen takes a2 here. b7, yeah, offering the bishop on d2, because yeah, this is immune here. Leela took on d5. If taking on d2, then that's answered with the check here. So this pawn is just queening. So queen takes d5 check was played. King g1, but now this pawn can't be taken because of check here, winning the queen. So so that pawn can't be taken. So we have actually queen b3, bishop b4. Very, very tactical interruption move. Check, king g2, c takes, and now queening. Yeah, it's all over. And in fact, Stockfish had something like mate in 45 at some point, forced mate in 45. The game was ended here. So yeah, another great game between the two. So Leela's not quite ready, but at least she did better in the match than the other previous engines had against Stockfish. So getting 2.5 out of the set of games. So against Stockfish, much better than the other encounters Stockfish had. But Stockfish is a really worthy champion, and yeah, maybe there were some opportunities to get a peaceful draw without this rook f3, but just trying to strategically trade off the dark square bishops, I think, is a positional angle on this game. It's Leela got tempted into a more tactical maze, which Stockfish outcalculated Leela in. So anyway, If you enjoyed this game video and found it instructive, please click on the box on the left. It should appear shortly to become a member of chessworld.net. Play against other YouTubers potentially with my reference code 1053 if you register with that. You can also check YouTube analysis in advance from the improved menu learned from the masters. So I put all my analysis before these videos in there, and sometimes I update the analysis as well. So if there's any updates, please check that for this game. Okay, comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks so much.